we cover everything from development, from capital markets. We've got some kind of health-related issues that people how they're managing them personally. We talk a bit about the diversification of the revenue for this industry. A lot of our members are now thinking about doing things that are not traditionally student housing.
This episode of the Student Housing Insight Podcast is sponsored by TheGuarantors. If you're an operator, you know the importance of a parental guarantor. Having parental guarantors legitimizes your rent roll. But have you ever tried collecting from a parental guarantor after their student skips out or they have to be evicted? How quickly were you able to recoup lost rent from that parental guarantor? The truth is, if things get to a point where a student skips out or is evicted for non-payment, the parental guarantor doesn't care about their credit score. There may have been a job loss or even a divorce. No background check is going to tell you which parent is about to leave their spouse or has an employer who is about to downsize. So how do you eliminate that risk? I mean, reducing risk is like the top 3 responsibilities of a property manager. Well, the Guarantor's rent coverage product does just that. Not only will it ensure that you can quickly recoup lost rent, but it will also increase your prospect to lease conversion rate because you're not waiting on a parent to provide their information. This product makes so much sense for student housing assets, and that's exactly why I'm now advising my asset management clients to forget about parental guarantors and talk to the guarantors. You can find more information about their rent coverage product as well as other risk reduction products they provide to the student housing industry by going to theguarantors.com/student. You can also find the link in the show notes. Well, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Dees. I'm also the CEO of Student Housing Insight. We're a platform for off-campus student housing professionals to network and share ideas as well as data. You can find out more about our platform at studenthousinginsight.com. In addition to the podcast, we also host the industry's webinar for the U.S. that's called ShopTalk. Each month, we provide legislative and policy updates that are impacting our industry. ShopTalk also provides a monthly overview of pre-leasing data, both on a national and a regional basis, along with a panel of operators who provide their on-the-ground observations of what they're seeing when it comes to pre-leasing and marketing. And we also typically provide a topic of the month as well. So a lot of great information. And if you are involved in the operation of student housing in the U.S., you should definitely be registered to receive our monthly invites. You can register to receive that as well as review our prior ShopTalk webinars by going to shoptalk.info, not shoptalk.com, but shoptalk.info. We'll also provide a link in the show notes for that. So make sure that you go there if you're not already registered. Well, it's that time of the year again when we are talking about what industry conferences are coming up. Now, if you're not a conference person and you don't go to these things and you have no interest in finding out, what's being discussed or, who's speaking on what topics, this is your chance just to skip an episode. Go catch up on, another podcast. I certainly won't be offended and completely get it. I know there's those types of people that the minute I start talking about conferences, they just completely tune out. So, hey, this is the episode for you to just tune out. Go find something else to do. But if you're debating on which conference to go to, or if you're interested in, what discussions are being teed up, then this is the episode for you. So, this is, let me pull up a couple things here. This is what we're going to be reviewing and touching on. These are all U.S. conferences. I know in the past I've covered, especially for the fall one, I've covered some of the events that are happening in Europe. If you want to find those, or you're interested in going to those events or getting insight as to what's happening at those events, go follow my friends over at the Housed podcast. It's the Housed Shared Living podcast. My good friend Dan Smith of the Student Housing Consultancy that's based in the UK. He's one of the co-hosts, and he does a fantastic job of providing info on those events. And so go check them out over there. All right. So let me bring this up. Here are the events we're going to be going over today. And let me just say, this episode may come out the weekend before this first event that we're talking about. So, if this was something you wish you'd seen on your, in the forecast, apologies. Make sure that you subscribe to these folks so that you can find out about it earlier. But it's the IMN Student Housing 360 Conference on September 9th, and that's in Dana Point, California. Second up, we've got the Fraternal Housing Associations Conference that's coming up September 15th through 17th in Oklahoma City. And then October 7th and 9th in Las Vegas, NMHC will have their annual Student Housing Conference. I've got an interview with Dave Borzos and Matthew Berger Matthew Berger, that we'll go into. Also in October, and also produced by NMHC, is the OpTech conference, which will be in the DC area, October 21st through the 23rd. And then the week before OpTech, we have Bisnow Student Housing and Higher Ed Development Summit that's going to be in Philadelphia on October 16th. And then we have LeaseCon+TurnCon presented by Interface Conference Group and Student Housing Business Magazine, which will be December 9th through the 10th in Charlotte. And we'll talk to Rich Kelly about that one. And then last but not least, and this really isn't a conference, it's a workshop for student housing management executives, as well as owners and asset managers. And that's our very own ShopTalk Executive Summit. It is December 11th in Charlotte. And yes, we are doing it the day after LeaseCon+TurnCon, and that's on purpose. We'll talk a little bit about that when I play my discussion with Rich Kelly. All right. So first up, let's talk about IMN and the Student Housing 360 Conference. This event's been going on for about 4 years now. This event has historically been in the February-March timeframe, and it's been mentioned in our spring conference preview. It's a smaller conference, but it's the only conference that is on the West Coast, which I think is important. The content, look, this is a networking biz dev conference, and because of that, everyone will be talking about, how great the industry is doing, what are some of the headwinds, and how great their company is. What I do like about this one is a lot of West Coast and primarily California-based family offices do attend this, and they're typically, small shops who are hearing about student housing as a alternative, real estate investment, and they're wanting to find out more about the sector. So if you're a biz dev person for a management company or a broker or, someone looking for equity, I think you'll get a lot out of it. If you're a site manager in nearby LA or San Diego, I don't want to say you won't get anything out of it. You're just not going to learn anything that I think is going to help you get better at your current position. And it's expensive. I mean, it's the registration fees aren't that bad. I believe they're under $1,000. The resort that they're at in Dana Point, I think, is like $500 to $600 a night. So, if you're local and you don't have to pay for, for a hotel, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But again, that conference is September 9th, and it's just one day, and it's on September 9th is a Monday. So as with all of these events, we'll include their website or event page in the show notes. And you can also find it on our website, studenthousing.com. Just go to the events page, and all of these will be listed there as well. Okay, so the next one is not really for a lot of people, but I wanted to talk to to everybody about it. Make sure that this was on your radar if it's something that that you are interested in. And I'm always amazed at who listens to this podcast. And we have a big contingency of folks that are involved with the development, investment, and management of Greek housing or fraternity and sorority housing. I mean, if student housing wasn't niche already, Greek housing is super niche. But it's a big part of the student housing experience for sure in this country. And the operators, which many times it's the national fraternity or sorority organization itself. But anyway, we have a bunch of those folks who listen to the podcast and join into Shop Talk each month. And a few years ago, a lot of these organizations and companies came together to form the Fraternal Housing Association. And they have now started their own conference. I don't know how long it's been going, maybe 2 or 3 years. And if you're involved with Greek housing or servicing Greek housing, go check out that in the show notes. I believe their website is fraternalhousing.org. But anyway, like I said, we'll put it in the show notes. All right, now let's talk about October 7th through 9th. That is NMHC's annual student housing conference. NMHC has the first and the longest running conference for the student housing industry. And, NMHC has been a huge advocate of our sector. They've put this on, since I believe this is the 21st year of it. And that experience and everything certainly comes through in the production of this conference. This one's for everybody, and especially operators. Is there a lot of networking and biz dev going on? Sure. But, the content and a lot of the committee meetings that are for the members is very focused on operations as well as, policy and legislative updates. But you know what? Let's go to my recent interview with Dave Borsos and Matthew Berger about this conference, as well as OpTech, which happens just a couple of weeks later. So here, let's go to that discussion now. Well, Dave and Matthew, here we are again. It is, for us, it's the middle of August, and the three of us have not seen or spoke to each other since July 11th. And seems like things in DC have been pretty sleepy since then. So what have you guys been doing to keep yourself busy?
Yeah, never a dull moment. Thanks for having us on, Wes. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Always a good time.
Well, I can't wait till we get to October and we're in Vegas and we're a little bit further along, to a point where I think we've probably heard some things from each side of the aisle on where things are going to be moving and what they're standing for. Maybe we can have a little bit better conversation or productive conversation of what's going to happen come the next 3 or 4 quarters as far as housing is concerned. But I am super excited about sitting down with you guys and talking about what's on tap for this year's NMHC Student Housing Conference. So I think this is the 23rd. Am I right with that? Is it the 23rd?
21st, right?
You know what? I'm not sure we actually know the answer to that, but we are definitely over 20 years old at this particular point in time. And I think we can always take credit for being literally the first conference on student housing. And I think we still have some people around who were at that first one who said it was just a room of a couple people. So kudos to those industry veterans, and happy to welcome a lot of other people on board.
Well, so last year we were in Las Vegas. It was a great venue at the MGM. We're back there again this year. So no hurricanes to worry about like we've had in past years. So yeah, I've named the city. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the venue, the date, all the details that folks need to know in regards to that?
Yeah, so it's a different location this year. We're at the Aria. we, NMHC, have had done a conference there. It's actually, in many ways, a better setup than we were last year. So we're pretty excited about that venue. And we are a little bit earlier this year. We're about 2 weeks earlier than we had been in the past. We're October 7th, 8th, and 9th. Excited to see everybody out there. I know a lot of people like Vegas setting. Some people don't. We certainly get a hot and cold feedback from people, but I think you can always get some good entertainment there, some great food, and hopefully some good deal making as well.
Well, and I can't remember, is it this conference or is there one before it that kind of kicks off the conference season for you guys? Is this the first one?
Yeah, so there's one before it. It's our fall meeting, which is really focused on government affairs and all the stuff that we're working on to try to boost housing supply for the multifamily industry writ large here in Washington, D.C. And I think it'll be a great conference, particularly given what you said when we at the outset, Wes, about how interesting a campaign season this has been already.
Yeah, so it's only 2.5 weeks before this conference, and as Matthew and I both work in our government affairs at NMHC. So as you can appreciate, we're involved in helping to plan that one as we are also planning this one as well. So we've got a lot on our plate from a pure conference planner perspective, but also, our other job, which is handling government affairs and regulatory issues. So,
well, let's kind of walk through it. Opening days, October 7th. I think keynote probably kicks off around 1 p.m. You've got, I saw on the agenda, Peter Lynch from Cardinal Group, which I'm excited to hear him. I got to hear him at a keynote last year. He did a fantastic job, so I know he'll do that again for NMHC. Him and I sent him a text yesterday to kind of see if he could give me a couple hints on what he was going to talk about, and I'm looking forward to it. Something the industry definitely needs to hear. But walk us through kind of day by day what's happening, starting with Monday the 7th.
Sure. So on Monday the 7th. You just mentioned we're super excited to have Peter Lynch come and speak. But then we sort of start with the real macro issues. So we have Chief Economist Outlook, and we've got Richard Barkham from CBRE coming to sort of provide that overall economic outlook, which I think is going to be really prescient this year, given the fact that, as we were talking about offline, Wes, right before we started, you sort of see inflation coming down. You didn't have a particularly great jobs report, but from last month. But overall, the unemployment rate is very low compared to historical averages. So it's sort of interesting to see where all those cross current factors are taking us, and what Richard will have to say about that. Following that, we have our Executive Insights panel, which I think is a mainstay at our conference. And we're looking forward to what the moderator, the indomitable Tim Bradley, has to say, and what questions he's going to have for our industry leadership. And I think that's going to be really great. Following that, we have got a panel which will sort of take a very deep dive look at the student housing marketplace. It'll have Tom Arith from Harrison Street moderating, and then Yardy, Charlie Matthews, and panelists from RealPage on to sort of take that deep dive look. And then finally, given that it is an election season, we will have a panel of NMHC employees taking a look at government affairs and what's happening in Washington in the legislative and regulatory space, and how that'll impact the industry, after November and beyond.
One thing that's important, we have an action-packed full day that next day. But the one thing that we did do a little bit different this year, recognizing the fact that some people head out of town, they kind of do their dinners, et cetera, both the first and the second night, and the attendance drops off on that last day. So we've actually we have no panels on the final day. And what we do have is a breakfast briefing. We've done this at a number of our conferences recently, where those who want to grab breakfast before they head out can engage NMHC in a conversation of what they hear that resonated with them. 2, what did we miss? What issues are important to them? What things should we as an organization walk away with? And to share any of their reactions to the overall conference. And then we're also going to have a property tour. So we will, for those who are sticking around and want to see a property, we will do a property tour on the campus of UNLV. So we're excited about that, but it's a kind of a change. So back to that full day, we cover everything from development, from capital markets. We've got some kind of health related issues that people can, how they're managing them personally. We talk a bit about the diversification of the revenue for this industry. A lot of our members are now thinking about doing things that are not traditionally student housing, BTR, conventional multifamily, et cetera. And a lot of, if you look across the spectrum, a lot of them are thinking about other types of revenue sources to kind of broaden their base. And so we have a number of very interesting panels that I think we're really excited about. And then one other thing that I'm going to mention is that we have a panel on international investment. And again, kind of going back to that diversification of revenue, there are people who are both providing student housing overseas, but also bringing inbound to the United States, but also outbound from the United States. And so we have an international panel that's going to focus on that. And dovetailing with that is Matthew and I raised money through the NMHC Research Foundation a number of years ago, and we are underway with some research focusing on that particular topic about the international market for student housing, both outbound and inbound investment. So that will be produced and released sometime after the conference, but and may be rolled out at our annual conference in January.
Gotcha. And I said we got a property tour on that second day as well.
Yep.
Maybe you mentioned that, but after the breakfast at the degree at UNLV, so that will be cool as well. Transportation provided for that.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, people will have to sign up for it, but we have buses that will take them around to the property.
Great. Dave, I know we got kind of started late. I know you've got to run. Feel free to hop off if you need to. And Matt, just wanted to ask you, or both of you guys, if you can stay on, Dave. We've got OpTech coming up as well, which is a big one for the student housing industry as well. Want to give a little bit of background on when that's happening and what to expect at that conference this year.
So that one is going to be here in Washington, D.C., and it takes place at the Gaylord National Resort and Convention, and it's October 21st to the 23rd. So if you've been to OpTech before, we typically have been in November. So we're moving everything up a little bit this year, and that's really only, again, 2 weeks after. So you kind of think about our meetings team here at NMHC. They are super busy getting those three. And then we're going to roll right into our annual conference planning right after that. But here in the National Harbor in DC, just south of the city. But one thing that is going to be a little bit different this year is that we're actually going to do an advocacy day. So people who want to kind of talk about technology and the issues pertaining to that, we'll be able to coordinate visits to Capitol Hill and visit with key congressional members who are maybe impacting our industry. So it's a little bit of a different touch and feel. I know, Matthew, if you want to talk about another thing that's going to be formally rolled out at OpTech, and this is our new initiative here at NMHC.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So our new initiative is called the Center for Real Estate Technology and Transformation, and that's going to be fully rolled out at OpTech, and that sort of center is going to be really focused on figuring out how technology is really reshaping the multifamily industry, including the student housing industry. So we're super excited about that. Our friend and colleague, Kevin Donnelly, is the Executive Director and Chief Advocacy Officer, and he's helping to put together that advocacy day that Dave just mentioned. But that's going to be fully rolled out at OpTech.
Okay, nice. Well, guys, I'm excited to obviously see you guys in Vegas. I won't be doing OpTech this year, but I've got to get it on the calendar for next year. It's been I think 3 years straight I haven't been able to make it, but that one's a huge one for our industry, and appreciate you guys putting that on each year. Anything else you guys would like to share with the audience? Obviously, budget season's coming up, and I know a lot of folks are saying, "Hey, what can we do with, how can we better allocate some of our money in order to go to things that are really helping the industry?" NMHC is always at the top of my list when I speak with management companies. But anything for folks that are thinking about joining this next year that you'd like to mention to them?
I'll start with that. So a couple of things, kind of going back to that one of the panels that we have at the conference this year, and that is around diversification of revenue. The attendance at our annual conference for those people who've historically and traditionally been in the student housing world has increased dramatically. So that there is a fairly sizable cohort of people within the student housing industry who are now coming to our annual conference. It's a huge conference. Mm-hmm. You can easily get lost there just given the size of it. But if you're looking from a transactional perspective and investment perspective, those who are operators, et cetera, this is clearly really kind of kicks off the industry for the year in January. So we always highly encourage that. Matthew mentioned before about our fall meeting that's coming up, and to the degree that, we are going to highlight government affairs and the regulatory issues and legislative issues that the industry faces, which are very common with the conventional side as well, that if you're interested in that, if you want to understand that, again, coming to the fall meeting is really kind of an important and would be extremely informative to kind of get a sense of what we do and kind of how Washington operates to the degree you want to understand that. And then next year, student housing will be in Scottsdale. So for those who love that Arizona air, love the golf out there, we're going to be at the Hyatt Scottsdale Resort and Spa at the Gainey Ranch. Beautiful place in Scottsdale. That's back to kind of a later date, October 20th through the 22nd. And then OpTech next year is back in Vegas. So to the degree that you like that, we're going to be at the MGM. And again, that's going to be pushed back later again, November 17th or the 19th. So, if you want to go out there and then hang around for Thanksgiving in Vegas, look forward to that. Those are, if I'm going to pick something, if you're in the student housing industry, obviously coming to our conference and going to OpTech, top almost anything. You'd be remiss to have your team not go there. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thanks so much. I know you guys have got a busy schedule today, coming back from vacation and everything else. So thanks so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Wesley.
Thanks. Well, big thanks to Matthew and Dave for their time. So, they did mention there is an early bird special, and that's for both of those conferences. But they didn't get into what the registration cost actually is. I want to give you a little bit of heads up on that. The Student Housing Conference is about $1,500 to $1,600 for non-members, and if your company or organization is a member, and I think they've got some other member packages that you can look at as well. It takes about $500 off of that $1,500 to $1,600 price. And pricing is about the same for OpTech. It may be $100 more, but you can find all that information again. We will have those event pages linked in the show notes, as well as at our website on the events page. All right. Now, one more thing about NMHC before I move on. If you're going to the Student Housing Conference in Vegas, if you're an owner or an operator attending the conference, we Student Housing Insight will be hosting a side event just for you. It's our TopGolf mixer that is happening on the evening of October 8th. Come join us at the country's largest TopGolf facility. It's actually pretty amazing how big it is. It's even got 2 swimming pools in it. And if you're not a golfer or have never played TopGolf, don't worry. You don't need any skill to play, and you'll have a blast. Heck, you don't even have to play. We'll be providing food and an open bar. So regardless if you want to spend the whole evening with us or you just want to, stop in on your way to dinner or show, please come out. We did this event last year when it was in Vegas and had a blast, and we're doing it up even bigger this year with more bays and a bigger lounge. And it's going to be a great time. This is an invite only event for owners and operators. So, how do you get an invite? Well, number one, you have to work for an ownership or an equity or development group, or for a management company and be registered for the conference. So if for some reason you fit that and have registered but you haven't received an invite from us, send me an email. I'll make sure that we get you registered. That email address will also be in the show notes. All right, so let's back it up a week before OpTech and talk about what is happening in Philadelphia on October 16th. Bisnow will be hosting their annual Student Housing and Higher Ed Development Summit. This is another event that used to be in the spring, or was part of our spring conference preview episode. They had it more in the summer. It's I think this event's probably been going on for 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. And it's always been in June or July, and it's always been in Philadelphia. This year, they moved it to October, which I think is easier for both student housing folks attending as well as the higher ed folks. And I'll say this one has really evolved over the years. It started out with kind of a primary focus on student housing. But Bisnow has really capitalized on the fact that, there's some great universities that are along that I-95 corridor between, Richmond and Boston. A lot of those universities are trying to figure out, what they need to do to stay competitive with attracting students. And, Bisnow's done just a great job of getting those institutions plugged into this conference. It's only one day. And for most of the folks on the East Coast, it's easy to fly into Philly that morning and basically fly back out that evening and get back home. The cost is only $140. And by the way, we've got a discount code that will be in the show notes to make it even cheaper. So who should go? I would say really anyone involved in student housing, developers, both off campus and P3. This is a must for you. If you're at the site level or if you're a regional manager, and I would say the transportation is cheap, for you to get there, you can't be being exposed to these types of conversations around university and off-campus development and getting the perspective from the university administrations that are attending as well. So I would really impress on everyone to get there and support this event. Again, that's on October 16th in Philadelphia. Okay. Last event, or sort of, is, you'll see in just a minute, but the last event is LeaseCon+TurnCon, which is December 9th through the 10th in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's hosted by our good friends at Interface Conference Group, who do the big Interface Student Housing conference in April of each year down in Austin. This is really just a great event because the timing of it is kind of perfect because it's right after exams at most universities. So, we get a good idea, from everyone on how their pre-leasing is kicked off. And, it's also that time of the year when properties are starting to request pricing from turn vendors for the summer. So, it's perfect to, be talking about turn as well as pre-leasing. And it's, like I said, the timing, I know it's not always the best for everybody because it's, right after exams and you're right before all the company holiday parties get started and that type of thing. But, as far as to take a quick break and kind of come together as an industry and say, hey, how are things kicking off for you? And here are the things that we've got to do over, the rest of the year to finish out the year strong. If there's surprises that some people are seeing, this conference is just fantastic for that. So before I flip over to the interview with Rich Kelly about this event, who is this event for? So 100% anyone involved with the operation and management of student housing. So site level managers, regional managers, and let me go back. When I say site level managers, I don't mean just, community managers, general managers, that CEO of the site. Really, leasing managers, resident managers, assistant managers, site level maintenance managers. I think this is a huge event for them. So, but then also portfolio managers, asset managers, directors of marketing and leasing, SVP of operations. All the student housing management folks should be there, and I think you'll get a ton out of it. All right, let's get to my discussion with Rich Kelly at Student Housing Business about what they are planning for at LeaseCon+TurnCon this year. Well, Rich Kelly, it's that time of the year again where we're talking about LeaseCon+TurnCon.
School is back in session, and the University of LeaseCon+TurnCon is about to get geared up as well, Wes.
Well, this will be the sixth annual LeaseCon+TurnCon. I'm excited this thing is still going. I'm excited that it's getting bigger every year, and I'm excited that it's in Charlotte. So, but hey, before we get into that, I always try to use this time to kind of recap, how did things go in Austin? Because I tell you, there as a attendee and seeing a little bit of some of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes, it seemed like a really big group, and it looked like a lot of business was getting done. So how did what's kind of your recap from the event?
It was a whirlwind 3 days, as it always is, but it was a great 3 days. We had 1,467 attendees, which
wow,
blows my mind. But as we've said, it speaks very highly to the interest in this industry that continues to grow, and that interest is coming from people outside of the industry in many cases, and they view our event and others like NMHC as a great way to go and get educated and obviously meet everybody who's there. So that's what a conference in a lot of ways is about. It's bringing people together and making good, efficient use of people's time, because there's a lot of folks there that then you can meet with and talk with and listen to on a session and things like that. So I guess we're fulfilling that mission, and I hope that we can continue to. And if the event continues to grow, great. I think it's great where it's at right now. It would be great even if there were 100 or 200 fewer people. It's about having the right people there. And but by all indications, good things still going on in the industry by and large. And if this interest rate cut happens, hopefully that spurs the investment market to come back more, and it makes it a little easier for some developers to get shovels in the ground, and that gets everybody working, like architects and contractors and everybody else. So hopefully it just becomes a virtuous cycle, and we'll have another great year next year.
And hopefully it's several cuts. I mean, I've heard as much as 3/4 by the end of the year, and which seems like a lot, but
right. And,
we'll take it.
The cuts take time to filter through the system for sure, right? But it's a lot of it's mindset, and the mindset has not been great for the last 6 months. Negative leverage and all these terms you hear. If the mindset people could start thinking more positively, all of a sudden, I think we'll see a lot of more activity. And hey, we're blessed in student housing. We've still had a pretty good investment market over the last year, and developers are still getting shovels in the ground and making things happen. But I think we can have even more, and to see a rebirth for a lot of folks.
Hey, I want to ask you something that I didn't prep you for at all. But speaking of interface, it's always pulled in, an international crowd. It's typically been folks looking to invest, in the U.S. markets. But this year, there were a couple of operators there specifically from the UK, and we've been doing our live podcast, on the opening day, and one of the folks that I met several years ago when I was touring properties in London actually came to our event, and they were registered for interface, and said that this was something he wanted to get to. In 2020, but with COVID and everything else, he kind of put that off, and he was excited to get there this year. Do you think this is ultimately leading to, us covering, kind of, when I say us, I mean, you guys and the industry covering, some international topics at the event as well.
I think the world's getting smaller in
Yeah.
student housing in terms of you see more U.S. folks going overseas. And as you astutely pointed out, you're seeing some of the overseas folks, if not coming to do deals in this market, but wanting to get to know people and more about it. So, so there's some really interesting differences, as you know, in the way European and UK student housing is run versus US. So I think there's probably plenty for each side to learn from the other. Content wise, yeah, I mean, it's something to think about.
Yeah,
and we kind of
pencil that in the list.
Yeah, we kind of touched around the edges of it in the last couple of years, and who knows, maybe more so next year. But good question.
Yeah, we've got so many groups that are now doing stuff in other countries, so that would be it'd be interesting to get that perspective. Well, hey, we're opening up fall here, and looking at all the different conferences within the industry that's been going on. LeaseCon+TurnCon has been something that has happened in December, so at the very end of the fall, and going into the holiday season. But just a quick recap: what's the what are the dates? I've already mentioned that it's in Charlotte, so maybe you want to give a little bit of information on the hotel, and then we could talk a little bit about what you're doing for groups and things like that.
Sure. So it's December 9th and 10th, which is Monday, Tuesday. So the event really starts Monday afternoon. We do roundtables, usually do one session, and then that goes into the opening cocktail reception. And then, conference is more or less full day on Tuesday from 8 to 3, 8 to 4, something like that. If you look at the calendar this year, it's a weird year with where Christmas and New Year's fall. And so we think that this December 9, 10, it'll work this year. We'd probably prefer not to be as late, but it's just the way the calendar, it's kind of funny the way November and December works. But it's basically the same time we've had it other years. And we'll start with the Monday afternoon and then full day on Tuesday. And I think it's then after that, people will probably start later that week or the next week, maybe really shutting things down for the holidays. But hopefully, I think they'll all be at LeaseCon. Personally, I think this will be one of the most interesting LeaseCon+TurnCon years we've ever done because of what happened last year with the whole leasing cycle.
Yeah,
everything starting off gangbusters, going great, rental rate increases and occupancy, et cetera, and then the hurricane force wind that stopped everything in the late winter, early in the spring, and then everybody's scrambling. So it'll be interesting to hear how everybody's scrambling wound up and what's going on with the shadow market and what people decide they're going to do with renewals, both in terms of rent growth percentages, as well as their strategy for, do they want to fill up as soon as possible? Do they want to try to spread out the leasing season more? So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to talk about.
I'm definitely looking forward to it. And, let's talk a little bit about, there's a lot of things to talk about, recapping this last leasing season and how this next one's going to be kicking off, because by the time we get to December, everybody's seen, 6 to 8 weeks of pre-leasing for the next year. Technology influences, on stuff like that. You and I have had a couple of conversations. I know that's going to be pretty big, topic that you guys are going to be working on, and finding panels and that type of thing. Obviously student housing isn't the only thing that you guys are focused on. What are you hearing, from an AI perspective when it comes to all the other different, facets of real estate that you guys are covering at France?
It's, it's the talk of multi, whether it's conventional apartments, even affordable, and even SFR, BTR. Certainly, it's a lot of relevance in student, as it often does, might be at the vanguard of some of the stuff and kind of leading the way. But yeah, I mean, whether it's the leasing side of things or the management centralization side of things, there's a lot there to chew on. I think the AI companies themselves have had so much going on. They're really now just getting themselves focused to really try to start getting their messaging out and getting more in touch with these companies in the multifamily and student arenas. So hopefully we can be a good conduit and bring some of that information to people at LeaseCon+TurnCon.
Well, Rich, let's talk a little bit about the audience, the attendees for this. For someone that maybe listened to this and they've never attended a LeaseCon+TurnCon, who is the ideal attendee that's going to get the most out of this?
It's kind of a big bandwidth there, Wes. It's I think you have your senior level folks from owner and operator shops who can get some here's some good information about some areas like AI and things like that, and what's going on with other companies' leasing strategies, and do some peer networking with folks they know in the industry. And then maybe the rung below them, those people, it's a great chance for them to get even further educated, meet more people, expand their network. And then one of the things we've really tried to do is get some property level folks to come or just encourage companies to bring a wide range of their team. And we do that through offering registration discounts if you bring 4 or more people. You've been very helpful in kind of the scholarship program where we try to get some folks at the property level that are really interested in growing their career and growing their knowledge base of the space. So to us, the LeaseCon audience, an ideal one is everyone involved, no matter where they might be in leasing, management, operations, and turn.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I didn't mention it earlier, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. Last year we did the ShopTalk Executive Summit, and of course, ShopTalk being the industry's monthly webinar that we host. We kind of build off of that, and I'm inviting in executives. Hopefully, they'll be a part of LeaseCon+TurnCon as well, but. The day after, on the 11th this year, we're going to be in the same hotel, and we'll have kind of a day-long workshop. I've really just there will be a survey that'll be going out here in a couple of weeks that will, kind of help us determine what topics we're going to talk about. But we typically take 4 or 5 topics that we know are going to be impacting the industry, over the next year, and we workshop those topics to, kind of, help myself come up with some of the content, that we'll be going over in ShopTalk for the next year, and anything else that us at Student Housing Insight can help the industry with. So if you're listening to this and you're executive, I would say kind of regional manager and above, but it all depends on the size of the company. This is a perfect opportunity for somebody to get get 2 for the price of 1, and which is completely free for owners and operators. So it really is 2 for the price of 1. But yeah, speaking of discounts, so if someone wants to bring folks from their company, it's 4 or more, you said?
Yeah, and we've had that more and more, and we really push it and encourage it. We've had companies bring 10 or 11 of their folks, which is awesome. It becomes a great bonding thing for them internally to be there with their colleagues, and then also just to, of course, benefit from everything at the event, which is the content and the networking. So yeah, so if a company wants to bring 4 or more folks, we will match your interest by encouraging you and finding a way to make it work financially and feasibly with the registration. And the conference registration it's not exorbitant, and it's basically the same as last year. We want to make this event accessible and get as many people in the tent. And I think we've been doing a better and better job of that.
Well, awesome. Well, Rich, it's great talking to you again. I know we'll see each other, in a few weeks when NMHC has their conference out in Vegas. So looking forward to seeing you there. And if someone wants to put this, on their calendar, obviously, like you said, December 8th and 9th?
9th and 10th.
9th and 10th. 9th and 10th.
That's 9th and 10th. The event will be announced and the website open either by the time this interview airs or right thereafter. Interfaceconferencegroup.com is our overall interface website. Lists all of our events. By the way, we have a lot of multifamily events this fall that could potentially be of interest to some of the folks listening to this as well. But yeah, and then we'll start promoting and getting the word out via our, email blast kind of, infomercials, if you will.
Yeah, if you're
very near future.
Yeah, if you're not already a subscriber to Student Housing Business, both the magazine as well as just getting on the email list, that's what I would do. Just tell you to go subscribe at studenthousingbusiness.com, and they will make sure that you get the emails letting you know when to register and when the early bird special's over with and everything else. So
all that good stuff.
Well, Rich, good seeing you, and
thank you.
We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it.
Take care.
You too.
Well, again, a big thanks to Rich for taking a second to talk to us about LeaseCon+TurnCon. Again, he mentioned the discounts that they've got for groups. I'm not sure where they're going to land on pricing for this year. I'll tell you, in the past, it's typically as far as the registration fees are concerned, it's typically landed around $500 to $600, and a lot of that just depends on if you register before the early bird special expires. But we've also done it. Rich mentioned it. We've also done in the past. I think the past 2 years. Yeah, 1 year I think we did 3, and the next year we did 5 scholarships for site level managers to attend this event. In the show notes, we're going to include a link that will take you to a form that will explain, what it is that you need in order to qualify for that scholarship, and then to, click on a form to fill out your information, and we'll be going through that process this fall. We typically announce it going into the second week of November, so about a month in advance of the conference. So. Well, folks, that does it for this episode. If you've got any more questions on the events that I covered, or maybe an event that I didn't cover, feel free to shoot me an email. I think this is the most number of events that we've covered in the fall semester or the fall season for conferences. So there may be some. Obviously, there's a couple new ones that have moved from the spring to the fall. Maybe you've got some questions about those. Happy to answer them for you, to give you my honest opinion. Just email me at wes@studenthousinginsight.com. And again, we'll provide that email in the show notes. Well, folks, that does it for this episode. If you have any more questions on the events that I covered, or maybe on some that I didn't cover, feel free to shoot me an email. We'll provide that email in the show notes. And for all of these events, we will provide those links in the show notes, as I've mentioned. But you can also go to our events page at studenthousinginsight.com. Again, that's studenthousinginsight.com. Just click on the events page, and you'll see all of these that are listed there, and it'll provide kind of a quick summary and some links directly to the registration page. Again, I want to thank our sponsors for this episode, TheGuarantors. To find out more about how TheGuarantors can help your property approve more applications and to help eliminate bad debt, please click on their link that's provided in the show notes as well. Guys, have a great day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.